Black Student Activism. We are the coordinating committee of the demands of Black students across campus. Our presenters are Shira Greer and Simone Reed, the main writers of the Protect Our Web statement, accompanied by myself, Jesse Amonkwa, Kayla Corbin, Katiana Isaac, Jordan Lofton, and Kristen Starks.
Today, we are starting with some base level assumptions that we all need to make in order to contextualize our statement. We would like to say that we stand united, empowered by our history, inspired by the genealogy of Black student movements and the fruits of their labors. We know two things to be true. We know it is not just our incomparable contributions to the university that make us deserving of consideration, rather it is the essence of our humanity. We know that the actions, and rather the inaction of this university, are direct results of white supremacy. Today, we call on to pull from and to learn from the Third World Liberation Front strike. In 1968, while the University of Richmond was still resisting integration, a coalition known as the Third World Liberation Front is formed between Black Student Union and other student groups at San Francisco State University to lead a 5-month strike on campus to demand a radical shift in admissions practices that mostly excluded non-white students and in the curriculum regarded as irrelevant to the lives of students of color. One of the most notable results of the strike being the establishment of the first Black Studies department. We found this to be notable because it was a group of students dissatisfied with their university. They knew that the actions that were placed by the university did not speak to their reality, and they demanded better. And it didn't stop there. In 1968, a multiracial coalition of UC Berkeley students comes together and forms under the same name, the Third World Liberation Front, to demand that the university acknowledge the histories of community of color as vital scholarship through the creation of a third world college dedicated to the underemphasized histories of African Americans, Asian Americans, Chicanos and Chicanas, and Native Americans. The 3-month-long protests that followed resulted not in a third world college, but in the Department of Ethnic Studies. Even though their demands weren't met fully, the Department of Ethnic Studies went on and led and helped to lead in 1999 another movement. Students from the Department of Ethnic Studies, under the banner of Third World Liberation Front, again calling on this greater genealogy, UC Berkeley students protested a series of cuts to their department by holding rallies, sit-ins, building occupations, and a hunger strike, resulting in a 5-point agreement in support of ethnic studies. Included in this was an agreement and a commitment to establishing a research center on campus, which evolved to be the Center for Race and Gender. We call on the Third World Liberation Strike today because it shows us that if we use the epistemological assumptions that are provided to us from the Black radical tradition, from the students before us, from the student activism that has garnered the way to our current era, that it is possible for students to petition their university, and it is well within our rights to do so. Which leads us to why we're here today. The Protect Our Web, a statement on Black student welfare. Our statement works to highlight the ways in which the university is continuing in its long racist history instead of learning from its troubled past. In order to decenter the Western order of knowledge, it is imperative to listen to the voices from the margins. It is the people furthest from whiteness who are not blinded by it. Our existence in the margins allows us to imagine new worlds that benefit everybody. As you see from the timeline from the Third World Liberation Strike, even though it started with the demands of Black students, it eventually expanded and benefited the entire university. And it kept going, not just in that moment, but decades later. And I would like to highlight today manifestations of white supremacy. three things that white supremacy does and the work that it does and how that relates to our petitions. The first one is a distortion of history under the guise of contextualization. We see this today with our Mitchell Freeman Hall and the name and the decision to name it Mitchell Freeman Hall and create this false equivalency between Mitchell and Freeman. We allow people to live in this illusion that context and braided histories make it okay to idolize and to center whiteness in the narrative. And we push back on that today. It is evident, our second bullet point here, the disregard of Black lives. I remember sitting in a faculty discussion and telling them about why we needed accommodations. And they said when it was presented to us by the student government, it seemed as if it wasn't in the context of that, so we didn't think about it. It is right there an example of the disregard of Black lives. We should not have to tell you what is going on in the nation for you to be aware of it. There is an element specifically of faculty, of accountability that needs to be had, that this is a part of your norm. This is a part of your day-to-day discussions. It should not take Black suffering for you to consider Black bodies. And lastly, the abstraction of the body of the mind from the body. We are taught over and over again as Black students at this university that we get to choose one. The health and the wellness of our bodies, it always is put after our education or vice versa. And we are no longer standing for that. We will not continue to perform or to push ourselves to unnecessary limits when the university is not serving us and making sure that both our minds and our bodies are cared for. We've seen this issue. It derives directly from slavery. We know that we can do better. And that is why we have our demands.
Our demands are as follows. 1, we demand the names of Ryland Hall and Mitchell Freeman Hall be changed, specifically removing the names of Robert Ryland and Douglas Southall Freeman from these buildings.
The school's decision to pair the name of two men who were not considered equals, one was fighting white supremacy and the other was trying to uphold it for as long as possible. This is a reflection of the school's inability to separate itself completely from the racist historical figures on this campus, thus upholding white supremacy. The university's way of appealing to students was this ill thought out name change, which shows that student concerns are the least of the university's priority. Keeping in mind, concerns were brought up by the student governments 2 years ago, calling upon the changes of the building, and they were disregarded. This decision was made in tandem with the Board of Trustees and sends the message that money is valued over the welfare of the Black students on campus. If the university's intention was to start conversations and discussions, it puts the burden on Black students to hold these conversations, which is damaging within itself.
Two, we demand expanded academic accommodations for all students in light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
The COVID-19 pandemic has imposed a great deal of additional burden and stressors, compounding the pressure experienced by students who expected to achieve highly during any given semester. Further, it has simultaneously eliminated many opportunities for rest, de-stressing, and engaging in extracurricular activities that promote recuperation. Students cannot be expected to succeed under extraordinary pressures with inadequate rest. During this unprecedented and troubling time, the fast-paced environment of higher education institutions, especially one like the University of Richmond, is not compatible with student well-being. Experiences during the recent Light Week have confirmed that leaving accommodations to the discretion of individual faculty is an empty gesture. Accommodations must be implemented on an institutional level to foster student wellness. Thus, we call on the Faculty Senate to host a revote on the credit, no credit proposal that would allow students to elect to take one class this semester on a credit, no credit basis. Additionally, we demand a higher number of wellness days in future semesters in which breaks are canceled. These wellness days must match the number of days off given during standard semester breaks and should be evenly distributed throughout the semester.
3, We demand the university subsidize off-campus mental health services for Black students due to the underdevelopment and understaffing of counseling and psychological services.
Black students deserve safety and health in order to complete their education as their highest selves. In the current situation fraught with isolation, discrimination, and a disturbing level of disregard, we deserve more resources allocated to our success. At the present moment, the university's reluctance to offer sufficient resources to our well-being is another damning piece of evidence in their long-standing history of suppressing Black students. As the pandemic continues to eliminate options for rest, relaxation, and social opportunities, it is absolutely dire that Black students receive access to sufficient mental health services. This environment of ceaseless stress and tension is currently unsuitable for carrying out the first and foremost goal of being students. Considering the constant sensationalization of racism and Black death in the world outside the university, Black students are particularly vulnerable to poor mental health outcomes. It is unreasonable to expect Black students to remain well without allocating resources to our health and stability. CAPS is at the moment unable to fully serve Black students. For obvious reasons, we desire counselors who have a culture similar to us. At the moment, there are only 2 Black therapists in CAPS. And while they serve a great number of Black students with absolute care and dedication that we are enormously grateful for, 2 is not enough to be able to serve the 200 Black students here without undue burden. There are also no Black male or Black LGBTQ+ counselors, which leaves a significant portion of our population unable to see themselves represented. We do not seek to devalue the work of CAPS, and our demand is that a plan is put forth to expand CAPS in the future to meet our needs more fully. In the meantime, we demand that the university subsidize off-campus mental health services for Black students. No longer will we be placated by superficial wishes for our well-being. It is our right as humans and students to be healthy. We need to secure tangible benefits for the present and the future.
All of these demands that we're asking for are not unprecedented. There have been so many different activist movements that have created similar demands to ours. And, just looking at our current context, over the past few years, but especially since the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement over the summer, we've seen so many different efforts to remove Confederate symbols and rename buildings and street names and other forms of commemoration that were named after Confederate leaders and other white supremacists. And so when you look, you can really find examples all across the country, but in particular in Richmond, we've seen tons of examples. Of course, we've seen 4 of the 5 Confederate monuments removed on Monument Avenue. We've also seen that the Richmond City Council voted to rename Confederate Avenue to Liberty Park Boulevard and rename Jefferson Davis Highway to Richmond Highway, with the first signs bearing the formal name of Jefferson Davis Highway coming down just last month. In July of 2020, JMU's Board of Visitors unanimously approved removing the names of Confederate leaders on 3 of their dorms, Jackson Hall, Ashby Hall, and Maury Hall. And in September 2020, VCU, right here in Richmond, identified 27 Confederate names and symbols across their campus to be removed and covered over. And they're in the process of doing that right now. There's no reason that we cannot follow suit and take the names of the white supremacists on our campus building off as well. In addition, when you look at grading policies from some of our peer institutions, they're also continuing to offer academic accommodations for students in light of the ongoing pandemic. For example, Middlebury College is allowing students to take 1 course, credit or no credit, including their required courses, and it does not count against the cap of their 5 non-standard graded courses during a student's 4 years at Middlebury. So very similar to the proposal we are trying to get our faculty senate to pass as well. At Oberlin College, they're allowing students to take all of their classes if they wish, pass or no entry, and they can decide however many they like to take that way. In addition, the classes that they choose to take for pass or no entry can count for their major, and the ones that are listed as no entry are not shown on their official transcripts. And at Smith College, students are allowed to take 12 additional satisfactory or unsatisfactory credits. So that would be roughly 4 UR courses or units for the 2020 to 2021 school year. And that's outside of their regular 16 credits for satisfactory or unsatisfactory. So really, when you look at our peer institutions, there are other ones leading the way in providing students the academic accommodations that they need to be successful throughout the year, and particularly in the spring 2021 semester. In addition, we've seen so many student activism campaigns, as Kayla mentioned, really since the 60s, with the Third World Liberation Front strike. There have been anti-apartheid movements, so many different student activist movements that have been successful. One that we wanted to highlight was Yale in 2017, after 2 years of student protests, including blackouts, walkouts, teach-ins, and other protests, finally renamed Calhoun College, which was named after former US Vice President and slavery advocate John C. Calhoun, to Grace Hopper College, and Grace Hopper was a pioneer in the computer field and also a Yale graduate. President Peter Salovey said that he did not want to erase history, but confront and learn from it, which is very similar to what our President Crutcher has stated. Clearly, there are other ways to memorialize and contextualize our history that don't involve leaving the names of white supremacists on our buildings. There are ways to engage more deeply and use our building names as a way to honor the people who actually represent our values. And I wanted to bring up a quote from one of the Yale activists who worked to have John C. Calhoun College renamed. She said, "Does anybody in this room know that Battelle Chapel, where we are right now, is a Civil War memorial?" I asked. No, because walking into a space named in honor of someone or something is just that, an honor. It isn't going to magically educate you on the significance of that name. By leaving these names up, all the University of Richmond is doing is telling us that these are the people that we are continuing to honor. It doesn't matter if we add a slave's name outside of the courtyard, outside of Ryland Hall, or that we tack on John Mitchell Jr.'s name to Freeman Hall. All that is just a name. It will not educate us. We can do that education and recontextualize our history in a way that actually works for all students without leaving these buildings up as names of honor.
For our conditions of unfulfillment, we expect the release of a plan to meet our demands in a reasonable time frame by Thursday, April 1st, 2021. Should a plan not be released by then, Black seniors and other seniors in solidarity with us will begin to disaffiliate from the university, meaning they will cease involvement with any university task forces, student government, organizations, and fundraisers, and will not engage in future interactions with the university upon graduation. Should a plan not be released by Thursday, April 15th, 2021, other undergraduates will follow suit in disaffiliation. Should students disaffiliate, they will not reaffiliate until these demands are sufficiently met. Disaffiliation work of university task forces, student fundraising, and other forms of labor that the university publicizes and profits off of. It has nothing to do with removing administration from the fabric of the decisions that are made over our well-being. It's simply encouragement to do more at the risk of losing what we bring to the table. We serve on committees and task forces that sometimes we don't know are amounting to very much at all, encouraging dialogue in areas where there are decisive and clear actions that the university should take. Not reaffiliating until demands are met speaks to the ways we are willing to sacrifice and need action from parties that have utilized our words for purposes we are not sure about. The Black student experience is not simply a teachable moment for educators, consultants, and our white peers. More. Terms don't exist to hurt anyone, and if met, we believe will simply improve the state of the student experience at the University of.
To bring it back to contextualize in our first ground assumptions, we said, we know it is not just our incomparable contributions to the university that make us deserving of consideration, rather it is the essence of our humanity. What we mean by that is that these are not demands owed to us because of what we contribute to this university. We are not here to ask the university to recognize our humanity. We are sure in it and we are self-determined in that. What we are doing is telling the university that we will no longer contribute to it and serve it if it will not serve us. And that is well within our rights of students.
We would like to end with this quote by Kwame Ture. The first need of a free people is to define their own terms. As Kayla and Jesse mentioned, we are defining our experience here because we've been disappointed and let down and the school has not regarded us in any way. We are deciding to define our college experience, our student experience, our Black student experience by our own terms. Our statement, our petition, and our demands reflect that there is a dire need of increase of well-being for Black students. So we have decided to define our own terms. This doesn't mean that our demands and what we want and our grievances are monolith. Our demands will benefit the entire student body at Richmond.
We also want to say that these three demands are only a first step. Nothing we're asking for here is inherently radical. We are simply asking for three things that we believe will begin to improve our Richmond experience. And we hope that these demands can be a starting point for future conversations and future changes to make Richmond a more inclusive and more vibrant and intellectually rich university for all.
We'd also like to add that we encourage those that are a part of committees, communities, task forces to push for these demands to take place. And this is the way of showing support by sharing these demands, by sharing the petitions, by signing. This is the only way that we can truly show the university that this is something that we're connected, we're all one, and we're trying to accomplish something not just for the Black students on this campus, but for the university as a whole.
We also want to emphasize that while we may not see these plans come to fruition, or we may not see change happen right now, we want to leave this university a better place for Black students and students everywhere. We want to leave this place better than we came, better than we saw it to be, but we want to leave a legacy here that we can be proud of and to invite other Black students here.
On behalf of the entire Black Student Coalition that masses of hundreds of Black students at the university, we would just like to say thank you for taking your time out today to learn. This will not be the end of our teaching. We will have more so that we can learn about white supremacy and how to dismantle it through the lens of the Black radical tradition and the genealogy of student activism that we have called on earlier. So we would once again like to thank you for your time, and we hope that you join us in our push against the university.